The wind howled over the icy ridge where Black Ridge Penitentiary stood, a fortress carved into the side of a mountain, unreachable by road and invisible to satellites. Built to contain the world's most dangerous criminals, it was rumored to be impenetrable. Inside its walls, there were no names, only numbers, and among them, one stood apart: inmate 2749. His real name was Alaric Voss, though few dared speak it aloud. A former military strategist turned war criminal, Alaric had orchestrated assassinations, toppled regimes, and manipulated governments without ever stepping onto a battlefield. A genius by every definition and a psychopath by every psychiatric profile, he was captured after a five-nation manhunt that lasted over 2 years. The effort to bring him in had cost the lives of 42 agents. Now, he sat in a solitary cell built 60 feet underground, with steel-reinforced walls, biometric locks, and round-the-clock surveillance. No windows, no clocks, no human contact. Every movement he made was logged, every breath recorded. Still, the guards spoke of him in hushed tones, not because he was violent, though he could be, but because of how calm he remained, always watching, always calculating, as if this was all part of a bigger game, and they were just pawns waiting to be sacrificed. Warden Klein had overseen the prison for 12 years, and even he kept a printed dossier of Alaric's behaviors. The books he requested, always nonfiction, usually psychology or engineering, the rhythms of his sleep, even the frequency with which he blinked. Every inch of the prison was designed to counter the mind of a man like him. Yet, nothing about Alaric's presence ever felt stable. "Control is an illusion," he had once told a psychiatrist. "You can build thicker walls." It started with a scream, then a crash. Within minutes, Black Ridge Penitentiary, long thought to be escape-proof, became a war zone. The East Wing erupted first. 2 inmates stabbed a guard during meal distribution. By the time backup arrived, another fight had broken out in the yard. Fires blazed in trash bins. Sirens howled. Cell doors glitched open and slammed shut as power flickered. Emergency protocols failed one by one, like dominoes tipping into darkness. And amid the chaos, Alaric Voss sat quietly in his solitary cell, eyes closed, lips barely moving, counting. He knew the plan was unfolding precisely as he had designed it. The riot was not an accident. It was an orchestration, years in the making. Smuggled information, coded messages passed through corrupt staff, and psychological manipulation of key inmates had all led to this perfect storm. At exactly 4:17 p.m., the lockdown system went into override, just as Alaric predicted. A bug in the software, embedded months ago by a compromised contractor, triggered a manual reset. For 6 minutes, the doors in Block D lost security. Alaric opened his eyes. The red light above his cell turned green. He moved fast. Beneath his bunk was a vent cover that had been loosened by careful, calculated pressure over the last year. Behind it, a tunnel barely large enough for a man to crawl through, leading into the abandoned maintenance corridors used during the prison's construction, forgotten by most, but not by him. He crawled in, leaving behind nothing but silence and a folded note addressed to the warden. Above ground, the guards were overwhelmed. Tear gas filled the halls. Fights turned into bloodbaths. Surveillance systems blinked static. No one noticed that inmate 2749 had vanished. Not yet. Alaric emerged in the old generator room, stripped off his prison uniform, and changed into a technician's outfit he'd hidden months ago in a rusted cabinet. Every detail was accounted for: the ID badge, the boots, even the layer of oil smeared on his hands to sell the illusion. He walked confidently through the staff exit corridor as alarms rang in the distance. One guard stopped him. "You coming from maintenance?" Alaric nodded. "Control panels fried. They want us rerouting power manually." The guard waved him past, distracted by the sound of gunshots echoing from the west yard. 5 minutes later, a black maintenance van rolled down the mountain road, unnoticed by helicopters circling the upper compound. Inside, Alaric sat alone, hands clean, clothes pressed, eyes forward. The van's radio crackled with reports of fatalities and prisoners unaccounted for. None of them had realized yet that the worst one was gone. Alaric smiled. Freedom wasn't the end of the plan. The official report was filed at 6:03 a.m. the following morning. Inmate 2749 is unaccounted for. The news didn't leak to the public, not yet. Only a select circle of officials, security chiefs, and intelligence operatives knew what had happened. Panic moved quietly but swiftly through government channels. Blackridge, the fortress designed to contain the most dangerous mines on Earth, had failed. And now, Alaric Voss was free. Warden Klein resigned within the hour. The National Emergency Response Team was deployed, and dozens of agents were flown in from across the globe. Every camera, communication log, and maintenance record from the last 6 months was pulled for analysis. A dedicated war room was established underground in Washington, D.C., its monitors glowing red with threat level updates. But none of it mattered. Alaric hadn't just escaped, he had vanished. By the time the first task force arrived at the prison, he had already crossed 2 borders, changed identities, and withdrawn a fortune from accounts the government thought had been frozen. Meanwhile, the people on his list began to disappear. It started with General Marchand, the French intelligence director who had authorized the drone strike that killed Alaric's brother. Found dead in his Paris apartment, the scene made to look like a suicide, but there were inconsistencies. No fingerprints on the weapon. The power cut minutes before the incident. Surveillance wiped clean. 3 days later, Senator Evelyn Carr of the U.S. Oversight Committee vanished on her way to a security summit. Her convoy never made it to the airstrip. All 3 vehicles were found abandoned, stripped of electronics, engines still warm, no bodies, no evidence. The press began to catch wind. Rumors swirled, whispers of a ghost operative behind the sudden deaths. But the truth was darker. Alaric wasn't killing indiscriminately. He was sending a message. Each target was someone who had helped build his cage, who had condemned him in secret, believing him broken and forgotten. They had underestimated the mind they'd locked away, thinking steel and stone could contain purpose. From a hidden safe house in Eastern Europe, Alaric watched the news cycle unfold. He scribbled notes across maps and intelligence briefs. Strings of red thread crisscrossed faces, locations, events, a timeline, a plan. He didn't want chaos for its own sake. He wanted correction, revenge, restoration. Back in Washington, President Hale addressed the classified committee. "We are not dealing with a fugitive," she said. "We're dealing with a war strategist who now sees the world as his battlefield. Every day he's free, another domino falls." But Alaric had already written the ending, and they were already playing their roles.